Well, we are a couple of weeks into this conversation about what it means to take Jesus seriously, not just to believe things about Jesus, not even really just to believe in Jesus, but to actually believe Jesus and to begin to think about what would be different if we took him seriously, if we began to put into practice what he says. And if we took seriously his invitation to become salt and light, transformative agents in the world. Remember, Jesus isn't just about what happens to us. He's also concerned about what happens through us as we are released as these implements that he's chosen, salt and transformative and covenant and light as illuminating and guiding influences in the world. And so as he does that, he invites us to consider how we have thought about living before, using these 10 words. We call them the commandments, but in fact that they are the word commandment doesn't actually appear in either Exodus or Deuteronomy. So he is riffing off these 10 words and the ways that they have gotten hijacked by even religion. Words that were intended to provide the guidelines for life as it was meant to be lived became rules that we were supposed to keep under fear of punishment. And the outcome is clear and obvious. We have found ways to do end runs around these commandments. And he talks kind of the big two at the beginning of the conversation. How do we deal with anger as a riff on his on the word that says don't do murder, and then how do we deal with desire, with lust that doesn't actually work its way into adultery? And he talks about how the necessity of dealing with anger and sexual desire. How that has gotten hijacked by the culture. And then he turns in the next one where we'll be today on the word that says don't bear don't lie, don't bear false witness. And along the way, he exposes how our ways of lying, our ways of deceiving have moved into the taking of God's name in a way that brings shame on the character and nature of God, taking God's name in vain. So it's kind of a twofer as he does a riff on these 10 words and invites us into this kind of new reality, this uncommon way of being, a life lived with integrity, a life lived without having to swear an oath because your integrity is such that people believe you because of the life you have lived shaped by the truth. So here he is in Matthew chapter 5, verse 33, and says, you have heard it said to the people long ago, don't break your oath, fulfill to the Lord the oaths you have made. But I tell you, don't swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by earth, for it is God's footstool, or by Jerusalem, because it's the city of the great king. And don't swear by your own head. You can't even make one hair white or black. So, all you need to say is yes or no. Anything beyond that is from the evil one. And we hear this land in our culture of fake news, in our culture of AI and deep fake videos, and we think, oh my God, how in the world does this even make sense for us? And that's why we are called to be followers of the great king, living an uncommon life shaped by allegiance to him over and above all else. So he begins with this reminder of a passage in Leviticus that says, don't break your oaths. If you make a promise, keep the promise. Please notice, already in Leviticus, we have bumped our heads against how hard it is not to bear false witness, not to lie. He already, there is a culture of practice that says, believe me, I swear on whatever it might be before the Lord, and that I will keep my word. Why has that already been developed? Because already, within a fairly short period of time of the issuing of those 10 words, we are already stuck in the fact that we're not the kind of people who can do that kind of thing. And so we bring in an external authority, God, the Bible, in our courts of law. Back in their day, it would be before the Lord, to give weight, to give heft, to give support to the word that we have spoken. Because the only reason we have to swear oaths is because we can't be taken seriously. We have proven ourselves lightweights when it comes to the density of truth-telling. And we swear an oath in the hopes that our and notice how ridiculous this is, even in the beginning. We swear an oath, give our word, that our word is reliable. And Jesus just calls out the silliness of this. And certainly part of this is don't make commitments to God that you're not prepared and able to keep. But what he's after particularly, especially as it develops here in this next thing, is next passage, is where we use oaths, where we use these promises, where we use these promissory notes to manipulate and control people's attitudes and dispositions and behaviors towards us, because we want them to believe us. We want them, and we take the oath because they don't believe us. And why don't they believe us? Because we aren't believable. We aren't people of integrity. We aren't people who have been formed by our following of him who is the truth. So he says, look, this is what you've heard, but let's cut to the chase here. Don't swear an oath at all. Here's what he calls out. Not by heaven, because that's God's throne. Not by the earth, that's God's footstool. Not by Jerusalem, it's the city of the great king. You have no control over any of those entities. Not heaven, not earth, not the city of the great king. It all belongs to God. So notice what he's saying. When you swear by these entities, the heavens, the earth, the city of the great king, as a way of validating your word, what you are really doing is taking the character of God and forging that signature on the bottom of your check. Don't be surprised when it bounces. Don't be surprised, because what you are doing, ultimately, he says, is taking and using the name, the character, the reputation of God in a way that is vain, that is empty, that is meaningless, that has no weight or depth or substance. And he says, if your word can't be taken seriously, your oath can't be taken seriously, especially when it's using the heavens, the earth, the city of the great king, entities over which you have no control, as validation for your, it's like swearing on your dead mother's grave. What? It doesn't give weight or value and then he says, don't even swear by your own hair, by your own life. I swear on my life. What control do you have over whether even your hair is black or white? Now, clearly, there are ways of making hair black or white, but you know what he's saying. At the end of the day, you have limited capacity even to control your own life. And it is that limited capacity that makes you untrustworthy. It is that limited capacity that we don't embrace to be a people of sincerity, to be a people whose word is their bond, to be a people who can shake on it and that be adequate, that be enough. Oaths were taken at that time to control, to validate a statement made, very similar to a piece of paper you signed. A couple of years ago, Jude and I bought a house. And when we did, I'm so thankful for DocuSign because there was that probably would have been at least an inch thick of documents. And I realized halfway through the process that every single one of those pages represents a lie that somebody told at some process in escrow that now they have to say, we warned you not to do this. And I'm signing saying, yes, you warned me that not to do this. What is being highlighted there is the silliness of artificially requiring integrity from people who are clearly not integrous. Clearly requiring and underlining how ludicrous it is to kind of offload integrity onto an artificial substance, a piece of paper, the heavens, the earth, the city of the great king, my head, that has no capacity for the life that lies. And this language, this frustration that he has, notice with each of these, the anger piece, the lust piece, the lying piece, deals with how it fragments community. Remember, we're told to be people whose righteousness, he says, exceeds that of the Pharisees, the most righteous people you know. I want your life in community as my disciples, salt and light presences. I want your way of being in community to exceed that of the Pharisees. They've learned how to play the game of manipulation and control and telling half-truths and omission, lying by omission, as well as lying by addition. And I don't want you to be those kinds of people. I don't want you, in other words, to take the name of the Lord in vain. Don't attach God's character to your mistruths. Don't attach God's character to your manipulation. Don't attach God's character to your way of managing and controlling impressions with the words you say. That's to take the name of God in vain, and that won't turn out well for you. It won't turn out well because he is reinforcing here what must have been the practice of the day and saying it's just ludicrous. It's just silly. If your word is not enough, your signature won't be. And of course, what he's picking up on here is the fact that now you sign, now we can sue you. Now we can take you to court. Now we can make you fulfill your promise. And of course, well, I suppose that's better than nothing, but it certainly isn't the kind of transformative, uncommon culture that we are called to model and live into as the people of God. And then he goes one step further. He doesn't just say, don't bear false witness, don't lie, don't bring in all of these authorities to validate whatever it is you have said, because you have no control over those entities, and in fact, you end up using God's name in vain. He goes one step further. He said, essentially, be so solid in your character, in your identity, that when you say yes, it lands, and you don't need to say anything else. When you say no, it lands, and you don't need to say anything else. In fact, anything beyond the yes as yes and the no as no, finally, ultimately, comes from the evil one. Now, I don't think he's saying never explain or never give rationale or never provide a reason for when people ask. That's not what he's arguing. But at the same time, we need to be clear on how we use our rationale and our reason and our explanations. Because for us, often we're not solid enough that a yes actually does mean yes. Sometimes we say yes when what we really mean is no. And sometimes we say no when what we really mean is persuade me. And Jesus is suggesting that when we do that, when we play fast and loose with the truth of our own decisions, that we are not going to be useful in saving the world. We become good at weasel words that, like Princess Bride, I'm not sure that means what you think it means. And so the problem is, he's getting at the heart, isn't he, of the why we lie in the first place, why we manipulate, why we try and control people with our words, why it's so important for us that everybody agrees this is the right and best decision we could possibly have made. Why it's so important to us that we be understood by everybody. Why? Because we're not solid enough in our identity as the beloved of God. And we have to earn our place at the table, even though it's already been given. And Jesus invites us just to take a half a step back, be solid in who you are, be solid in the love of the Father for you, be solid in your identity as salt and light, speak the truth, always in love, learn how to say no, because if you don't know how to say no, it won't be very long before your yes doesn't mean anything either. You will have committed yourself to far too many things to be able to do any of them with any degree of success. Become the kind of person who is thoughtful and has heft, weight, substance, that then begins to transform those around them like a rock transforms the flowing of the stream, because it doesn't move under pressure. It's not conform, Paul's language now, to the pressure of the world around it. It is transforming the world around it by its integrity, by its pressure. So again, he's concerned about this righteousness that exceeds that of the Pharisees. And that means for us stepping away from all of the ways that we manipulate others through our words, through the ways that we use them. It is not acceptable for us to try, as citizens of the kingdom, to control outcomes by the ways that we use our words, as supported by the authorities that Jesus is seeking to push us to. And please notice, he's also inviting us into a position where we accept the yeses and nos of our brothers and sisters. We honor that. We respect the choices and decisions that other people have made, and don't try and whine and weasel and explain a different outcome by means of our bullying, by means of our manipulative control, bullying and bribery and threats and promises and seductions and tantrums, all the ways that we try in our current cultural space, sometimes in prime time, to manipulate and control others and the behavior of others. And Jesus says, if you want to be part of my kingdom, you can't play that game. If you want to be an uncommon citizen of the kingdom of the heavens who happens to reside in whatever country it is that you reside in, who happens to hold a citizenship identity, remember, ultimately, you're a citizen of the kingdom and a green card holder everywhere else. And you abide by the way of the king in the kingdom. So what that means, of course, is that we can't manage or manipulate other people, the impressions that we leave, how important it is that people think well of us. I get that. But notice if they think well of us because they haven't heard the truth, if they think well of us because they don't know the whole story, because we've spun the narrative, it's not us that they think well of. It's a ghost. It's an ephemeral being that doesn't actually exist, because we tell these little white lies, some of them, and we need to kind of wink, wink, nod, nod, in awareness that there are some things that just let go. Does this dress make me look fat? There's no way to answer that question without that, maybe that little white lie. That's not what he's concerned with. What he's concerned with is the ways that we manage and damage community by our excuses, by our over-exaggerations, by our partial truths, by our fake news, by our bring-your-own-facts culture, by our convenient omissions. Essentially, if we want to build a community following him who is the truth, that will require something of us. We don't need to manage impressions. We just need to live with integrity and then let the chips fall where they may. Now, please notice, this isn't a dismissal of what people think. It's an honoring of the fact that they can think what they think, and we want to tell the truth and live the truth, undergirded by love, because that's the way also of the kingdom. I can't take responsibility for what other people think, but I want to live with the kind of self-control that can think before I speak, and then having spoken, I can stop talking. So this value of a simple, authentic life of integrity, not having to remember what I told this person so that I can tell the same thing to them the next time around, because I've just lived out of the truth in every instance. I have spoken and then let it be. I don't put on airs. I don't act one way with this group and another way with a different group. I am who I am in all and every situation. And if we're invited into that transformative reality, if we are invited into that uncommon identity that partners with God to save the world, we have to be people who neither tell nor live lies. And we have to insist for ourselves on the foundation and contend for truth to be told. If we're going to be disciples of him who is the truth, we can't simply agree with something because it already agrees with us. We need to be ruthless in our pursuit of especially in a culture in which truth seems to be available for sale to the highest bidder. If we're going to make a transformative difference, we can't simply sign off on something because it agrees with what we have already landed on. We are invited to be different. We are invited to be salt and light. We are invited to be uncommon people who, by our mere presence in the world, begin the work of transformation that leads to redemption. That's our work. Let's pray. Oh Lord, this is hard. And it's not hard because we don't understand what's required of us. It's hard because already we are spinning out questions of exceptions. We're spinning out what ifs. We are spinning out but maybes. And I pray that you will, by your Spirit, gently but firmly, lead us to a full knowing of you, who are the truth, and then to the living and speaking that comes out of that relationship. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.